Okay, great. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the semi-annual PAC meeting. We are very excited to have you here today. We will plan to talk about the annual meeting, just give everyone an update on that. We'll plan to, and then we have an engagement survey that we are hoping everyone could take about 5 minutes to fill out. We'll have project updates, some of the big overview projects like the risk stratification project and the clinical conundrums project. And then Lillian will talk about concept submissions. Then we'll have practice or committee updates, and then we'll do breakout sessions with the different committees. So if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. And before breakout sessions, we can go through any questions. All right, so this year the Oncofertility Consortium is joining with the International Society for Fertility Preservation. So there will be no separate Oncofertility Consortium meeting, and instead it'll be a joint meeting with the ISFP. The ISFP will be November 19th through 21st in Miami, so that's a great time to be in Miami. And I will say that I put the link to the scientific program there, but it looks amazing. There are a ton of different things that are specific to the pediatric and adolescent oncofertility. I just put a couple of, like one of the morning sessions, there's two different rooms you can go to. And so I just put some of the examples of one of the mornings, the different types of sessions that you could look forward to. There is early registration through August 17th. And when you do it, you do have to book both that and the hotel at the same time, just so you're aware if people have different, budget restraints for this year versus next year through your institutions. And then abstract submission deadline is June 30th if people are interested. We are excited to announce that there will be a PAC meeting that will be held on November 19th, which is because the meeting itself doesn't actually start until the evening. So there's Oncofertility 101 and then a ovarian tissue hands-on experience, and we'll probably run a PAC meeting kind of around the time that those are going on. So more to come about the time and location. It will be just a time to get together to go over updates and get our committees together, and everyone who is part of the PAC would be welcome to attend. And we're looking forward to having everyone join us there. So now here's the survey on engagement. So we really did want to have a chance to hear how everyone is feeling about the PAC and different ways to get involved. And we want to make sure that PAC members are feeling like if they are able to get engaged and want to get engaged, that they have an avenue for that. So if you would have a chance to please this probably will take about 5 minutes to fill out. If everyone could just do that with a QR code, that would be wonderful. And I'll give everyone a few minutes to complete that.
So, Allison, how many breakout rooms would you like to have? Unmute yourself.
3, please.
3. Okay, and what are the names?
The practice committee or clinical practice committee,
Okay.
the research and education.
Okay.
All right, give just one more minute, and then you can obviously finish it up at the later time too. But we really do want to make sure that people are engaged who are interested, and we want to see how we can best serve everyone in that regard. All right, so then I'm going to give it over to Dr. Karen Burns, who is going to give an update on the risk stratification 2.0.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So we embarked on this update for the risk stratification just over a year ago, early in 2025. So when the initial risk stratification came out in 2020, the goal was always really to update it every 5 years or so. So this is the first iteration of the updates. So our goal has really been to review the literature we went back to 2018, 2 years before the last risk stratification was published, up through December 31st of 2025. We are hoping to acknowledge the new agents and stem cell conditioning regimens, although we'll have to see what we're able to do. But if nothing else, address gaps in the literature, along with updating what we have the literature to support. So we have several different specialties involved in this, including Peds Onc, REI, PAG, radiation oncology, endocrinology, possibly another that I'm forgetting. So where we are with this, we have, through our literature poll, it initially polled over 20,000 abstracts. We whittled that down through an extensive process to about 140 papers that are just finishing their abstraction right now. So we're up next for quality assessment. Our goal is over this summer to get the tables formatted and start to discuss the evidence and decide whether we're going to make any changes or not. And we've actually already started writing the manuscript. So we are hoping to submit this for an abstract at ISFP with the idea that if it's accepted, we can get some feedback on the project there and then submit it after that. Since our literature poll went to the end of 2025, we're really kind of under a timetable of getting it submitted by the end of this year. So happy to take any questions, but just wanted to give everyone an update.
And I do want to give major kudos to Karen and Kari, who've been leading this. This is a tremendous amount of work, as you can see, with 20,000 abstracts, and also with lots of different people who are very busy trying to get different projects done together. So kudos. And I think this is going to be a great update, and I know we're all looking forward to seeing that. So good work.
It was a few more abstracts than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. We're like, oh, maybe it'll be like a couple hundred. No. All right.
Karen, there is a message in the chat from Lindsay Frazier on, is there data from the reduced intensity treatment regimens and also high dose carboplatin? And go ahead.
Yeah, we will get information on reduced intensity treatment regimens to some extent. I don't know that we're going to have enough to really break down the transplant category more than it already is, but we'll see. And off the top of my head, I don't know that we're going to find anything on high dose carbo. I don't remember seeing anything about that, but also great things that we can put in the call for more research section of the paper, which is growing by the day.
Yeah. And Lindsay, Jen, I think in terms of that, like the recommendations, like one of the issues all the time is you go through this ton of literature and you're like, oh, if only they had joined forces with someone, if only, they had sort of done it this way. And so like what you're pointing out are these questions that we all have, and the need for like just really a different way of doing the research studies. Because literally going through the literature is actually one of the most frustrating things about summarizing it, when you kind of, see what you're working with.
Yes. agree with that, all of that.
Mhm. All right, then next we have Lillian, who is going to talk about a brief discussion about submitting a concept.
Perfect serve message.
So you may remember that last year Kari had developed a very nice way of putting together a concept. So the idea is, if you have an idea that you would like to explore in the PAC, whether it's more on the clinical side or the research side, you were to submit your idea to the chairs of those subcommittees, and they would give you feedback, and if it felt like it was a good fit to be a project within the PAC, like the PAC could help you with that, or the PAC could answer those kind of questions, you would be asked to develop a concept. So Kari put together this nice concept construct, or how you could actually do that. And then you would get feedback on the concept, and the whole thing would eventually get you down the line to actually launching a project in the PAC. And the purpose of that was really to help you help everyone think through the questions they wanted to ask and the information they needed to gather to be able to answer their initial question. So the questions I would ask of the people of the membership of the PAC is like, have you ever thought about submitting a concept? And then if you thought about it but maybe didn't go forward, what were the barriers? Did it just look too complicated, or you didn't know where to start? And I think those are the things that we hear. It's really not meant to be that complicated. And so I think it's the next slide, Allison, or if you go next. Yeah, no? So the question then I want to pose to the group is, would it help if you had a personal concept writing mentor or buddy? Because I think I just think that maybe it's not intimidating for some people, and if there are other barriers, then please tell us what they are. But we're really interested in finding out if people want somebody to sort of help them with the concept writing process. If we hear back from you that that's something that you want, then we'll try to pull together a group of people that would be your one-on-one sort of helper with trying to get your concept completed and back to the chair of the committee. So I'm happy to take any questions. Okay, well, if you are interested, if you think that would be helpful, please give me or Allison that feedback so that we can get a little pool of mentors that maybe can help. There's a question that said, I think a direct to the types of projects and resources that the PAC can help with would be helpful. So I think, I don't know, I think we can say that resources wise, the PAC doesn't like have grant money. I mean, we don't have statisticians, but what we can do is connect you with other people. Like, let's say you're looking for a certain kind of investigator, or maybe you just need a little bit of help staying on a timeline. We can help you with all of those kind of things, or figuring out your specific aims. And I think one of the things that the concept is designed to do is to help you clearly define your specific aims and generate tables. If there's one thing that I learned from the concept idea, which really came from the childhood cancer survivor study, is that if you generate your tables, even mocked up tables, before you actually start collecting your data, you'll be surprised at how helpful that is to be sure you're collecting the right data. So some of that is just trying that's the idea of the concept, and that's the idea of what the PAC leadership committee can do is help you with that. Seth or Maggie or Kari or Allison, anybody have other thoughts about that?
No,
additional thoughts
there's
from
just a
Maggie.
follow-up in the chat that says, so they would not be able to provide or facilitate access to clinical data access across institutions. And the answer is no. There's no like current PAC database that you can mine for projects or things like that. And the PAC also does not serve as an IRB. So we're sort of experts to help develop a project and to move it forward, but there will need to be individual institutions involved for using their IRB to get either IRB exempted or approved projects, et cetera, and to move things forward. And if there's something that requires collecting data across several institutions, it may require a multi-institutional sort of IRB proposal. Part of how we've developed the concept process, the goal is also to help already have that concept in place that would be something you would submit to an IRB as well. And I think someone has their hand up, a couple people. Sarah?
Hi, yeah, this is Sarah. And I just have a question because I think it would help facilitate some of the submission. So sometimes I have ideas and then it's unclear to me, or it becomes clear to me that something very similar is already being done, whether within the PAC or otherwise. But I don't know if there already exists kind of a list of the ongoing projects. I often see them. You have a good idea, and then you get an email from Oncofertility Consortium that's sort of a link to already the thing that's being done. And so in the setting of I'm not primarily a researcher, but have clinical questions, and so might be able to develop a concept from those, but I'm not like already grant funded and doing something. Is there a list, an active list of ongoing PAC projects that I'm just missing?
I think I can speak for the group to say there is not, like a sort of link that you can go to that will list it all out and have a timeline. In part, just maintaining that is a little bit challenging since we have a smaller group. But the goal is not for you to develop a whole concept proposal and then send it and then find out, oh shoot, someone has done something similar and I just wasted all this time. The place where this starts is really with that idea. And if you have it, then sending an email to the appropriate chair of the committee. So if it's the clinical practice subcommittee or research, to say, hey, I've got this idea, even if just like a couple sentences, and say, I wanted to look at this thing amongst this group of patients. Does this sound like something that I should work on, or can we move it forward? And it may be that the subcommittee chair says, hey, that is a fantastic idea. Why don't we flush this out a little bit more before we sort of go to the full concept stage and ask some questions or bring in this person, or what else do you have in terms of this idea? Or they may say, this is already sort of ongoing. Let me connect you with the group to see if there's a place for you to collaborate, or this is a great idea, but it doesn't sound like a PAC appropriate project. So please feel free to move forward, but it won't sort of go through our process. Those are sort of the three buckets it could go in. And then after you sort of get approval from a subcommittee chair to move forward, that's when you would actually develop the concept that will be more formalized and not just this idea, so that you hopefully don't waste your time doing something and then feeling like, well, shoot, I could have used that time doing something else.
Yeah, I would echo everything what Kari said. And ideas do not need to be fully formed or fully baked. A 2 or 3 sentence email of, hey, this is what I've been thinking of, and then we could probably, quickly chat to see if there's, what avenue is worth going down. Is it worth going down that avenue, and what's being done right now? So please do reach out with, any levels of ideas. They do not need to be totally thought through in terms of, of how things would work.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I guess, Lillian, you can hear in the question that potentially that was a barrier that I would have considered, that maybe it needs to be more complete with prelim data and et cetera, but it sounds like not. So
No,
very
so
helpful.
yeah. that's the beauty of we're such a small group. And remember, so just sort of reaching out with your idea and just floating it past, if you think it's a more clinical idea, more research idea, what do you think about this? Would this fit in the PAC? And that's what Seth and Maggie will sort of sort out. Yeah, that feels like it would fit. Have you thought about this? Or no, that's already in process. So that all comes in that first blue box before they say, yeah, this is good. Let's go ahead and go the next step to develop a concept.
And if you're not sure, is this more of an education thing or a clinical practicing, you can always email me or Lillian and we can kind of talk through and then connect you to which group would probably be the best suited. And we're pretty, I think easy to work with. So we're happy we're happy to kind of talk through which group that would be best suited under.
There are hands up, but I do want to say one thing. I think this concept thing feels like, oh, it's so formal and it's so, sort of scary. I think we as individuals are not scary. We're like, yeah, we'd love to talk to you about your ideas, but then we want to help. We want you to have your best shot at it working and actually getting and answering the question you want to answer. And so that's why we put the concept thing in there. So let's think through this before you launch the project and say, oh, shoot, I wish we would have done it this way, or I wish we would have thought of this.
And Jenna, did you still have a question? I think your hand was up.
No, you guys answered it. I think I was just wondering if there was like a pre-concept submission phase, and you got it.
Yeah, great.
Sana, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I appreciate your expertise. I think one thing I would really appreciate from the previous question is if you guys can give us a list of available clinical data sets that's available there about OII cancer patients. I think that would be really helpful. I know University of Colorado is doing something and some other people are doing something, but I don't know if there's any national data that people can tap in, even if it's not part of the PAC, but maybe you guys have access to and you can make this information available to the group.
That's a good suggestion. Allison, we can talk about that some more in leadership. I don't know whether there's a comprehensive list of data sets that we can access easily, or that people can access.
Mm-hmm. I mean, eventually our hope will be something that when people are contributing to it could use the data for inquiries, but that's not really off the ground quite yet. And I don't really know of any other kind of national data sets, which is why our hope was being created.
And I think with the cancer registry, it would be nice if we can kind of pioneer that. They should really collect AMHs and reproductive health outcomes and all these things to their already existing data. So that will make it easier so not to have to reinvent the wheel again.
Thank you.
Some of that's coming from our hope, not all of it. I mean, that takes resources and commitment from people. So that was the sort of thought behind our hope.
Thank you.
Funding.
Yeah. All right, Jen?
Thanks. So I wanted to throw an idea out there, which is, I think probably the most success in one way of research within this group are surveys, right? Like I think a lot of stuff kind of goes that route. And I think it's not even unreasonable to think about some survey stuff that we would do just within the PAC. So for example, I mean, I've been, thinking a lot about insurance coverage for procedures and have been thinking about it in a way that I don't think has to be like a super broad, like could be within the PAC, how do different sites cover costs? And recently, I've been focusing more on sperm banking. So like, how do people even figure out whether insurance covers sperm banking is like one idea. But I'm wondering if as a group, we could think through like a few ideas that we would put together in a survey and direct it at the PAC membership. So we're all sort of in it together. You know what I mean? Like we kind of ask a whole bunch of questions. Different people could have, different pieces of the puzzle that they're interested in so that, they could follow up like with that data. And then as a group, we should kind of commit, right, that the people in the group would answer the survey. I mean, I think every time you think about doing like a new survey, you just dread sending it out because somebody's just going to be like, no, I can't, you know. So just a thought.
Yeah,
I think
great.
that's very similar to what Kari did, right? With the AMH data. We're trying to look at AMH practice. So that is a good example of, it was a survey and it was trying to see how do people use AMH. So that, I think, yes, I think that could very well lend itself to the PAC. I do think, you know, we still got to have IRB approval and somebody to develop the survey and, but yes.
I think what I'm saying is maybe first we could ask everybody in the PAC, like, what are some questions that you would like to ask? So it could become a bigger survey, you know, so that everybody isn't filling out 20 different surveys that like all the different people are submitting, that like as a group, people could say, hey, I'm kind of interested in this issue that maybe I could get, you know, data from this group. And we could put it together. So everybody just gets like one survey, but it may be, you know, 5 disparate topics. You know, you have to be conscious of, you know, not being too long, but you know, I don't know, there's got to be some saying that describes this, you know, like the killing one bird, you know, that's whatever, killing some birds or something. That's sort of what I meant. So, because I think, right, I mean, you know, Kari's study was great, but in a little bit to like avoid the survey fatigue in some way and just, you know, get a bunch of different people to be able together, you know, to put something, you know, be like, oh, I kind of was interested in this. And then it's a little easier, right? Because you go through one IRB and, you know, maybe have one database where the answers go. And, but whoever sort of has the interest or suggestions could sort of follow up on their piece of it. And again, it would be like, yeah.
Sorry, Jen, that's a neat idea. And what came to my mind was, even if like there was one annual survey that goes out to the PAC about practice. And the idea for that annual survey comes from PAC suggestions of practice questions they want to ask. Now, you still got to get the lead, the PI who wants to head it up for each year, if you will, and that person has to get IRB approval. But I like what you're saying about trying to avoid survey fatigue. And I think it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, because I know we had talked about also like OTC and who is qualified, like what institutions say, you know, if there's a CED cutoff, if there is a radiation cutoff, if there is an age cutoff and things like that for OTC. So that would be another example of a survey that could kind of go in with the, you know, what Jen was talking about. So I like that idea. So I think, you know, we can continue to explore that, and we can talk a little bit more about it too at the next leadership meeting, and definitely send an email out to the listserv.
All right, I got to go to clinic, but thank you guys. It's nice to see everyone's face. Bye.
Any other concept questions? Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Well, I think I'm going to move right along actually to a survey that was done and was a concept, so we can kind of see how this all played out. So Venetia, if you want to talk through your clinical conundrum survey, and we can talk through some results that we found.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, the concept proposal and the forms and stuff, as someone who kind of started in the process, I think it sounds very overwhelming at first, but it was very helpful. Where this concept and these questions, you know, we all had, and I remember sitting down at, you know, the in-person meeting, and this had come up, and I had volunteered to kind of take it on and do it. And the first was sending an email of just kind of a question and an idea to Seth and Kari. And then there's this that concept proposal, which is written out nicely, and you kind of fill out a bunch of questions. And the nice part about it is it pretty much turns into a protocol. And I had one way that I thought, you know, it could go, and it could have gone in multiple different directions. But the nice part is that you get feedback, and, you know, this works, this doesn't work. And like Kari had said, it could be your institution thing if we want to continue it this way, or we can turn it into this. So long story short, I feel like the entire process was very helpful, especially for somebody who is new to all of this. I got to meet a lot of people, and a lot of smart people, and people that do all of these things, and have had a lot of help along the way. So it is not as intimidating as I think we all think it could be. But yeah, so this was a clinical conundrums. You know, we all have these questions in oncofertility of what do we do in different scenarios. And so it was a concept proposal that had been created and came up. And at the end of all of it, we did create a survey. So if you were at the most recent in-person meeting, you participated in this survey. So we had 37 multidisciplinary providers that were able to kind of give us a better understanding of just your current practices and decision-making around fertility preservation in pediatric and AYA oncology providers. And you can read a lot of what's on there, but I'm going to kind of summarize. So overall, institutions really demonstrated that they had a strong infrastructural and support for fertility preservation. And nearly all of the respondents that were present said that they did have access to fertility preservation with varying different roles that they had in it, as well as what they would offer, pre-treatment, post-treatment, counseling, all of that, and then also procedures. Now, as you can see for some of the findings, some of the biggest things were, even if there was institutional capacity, there was a lot of variability in that decision-making. So 70% of the providers had said, like, one of the questions was, if you had a poor prognosis, would you offer fertility preservation? And we had about 70% that said that they would, but if you were at the meeting, there was a lot of discussion about that, where we're having conversations. Whether that turns into actually doing it or not is different. So there was questions along that line. The AMH, so we had a question that we had posed to the group is, if you have a patient who has low AMH post-therapy, kind of how do you approach that patient? And you know, the majority of the answers were, it depends. It really depended on the patient's clinical context. We have a lot of questions surrounding what do we do with the pubertal patients where there is possibility of contamination. So MRD positive disease, tumor spillage in the abdomen. So a lot of different types of questions surrounding that. And as you can see in the MRD positive leukemia patients, up to 64% said that they did offer. But overall, some of the biggest barriers and a lot of the questions that we found is there's a lot of variability in what all of us do. We take into account therapy, we take into account prognosis, the long-term benefits. The overall of what we learned from the survey is we need standardized guidelines or some type of approach to a lot of this. So that survey, if you want to go to the next slide, and I can answer specific questions too if people have it based on each individual questions. But where we are in terms of this project, so we had done this survey back in October. Those of you, if you were present in February, our education committee had put on a webinar to have a panel discussion on some of these questions. So that is available for you to view as well. But right now we have the results of this survey that we did that is in publication. And there are members of the PAC that are currently reviewing all of it with the goal of hopefully going to publication in the next month or so. So again, kind of going back to starting from a question to hopefully a publication, I think the idea of research questions, concept proposals, utilization of everybody in the PAC is really great, because then this is kind of what you turn out.
And this was a kind of win-win type of thing, because it was a concept. We were able to do a survey and leverage our members. And then also we've been doing some webinars. We did one webinar and we have another one upcoming about the results, and to talk through some of the questions that had more heterogeneous results. So I think it was a really great example of how the PAC can kind of work with its members to for different kinds of projects. So, all right. So next we're going to move on to our committee reports. So Seth, I'm not sure if you were going to go through this.
Yeah, I can go through this pretty briefly, because I think a lot of these things were touched on in other discussions. I'm Seth Ratz. I'm the current chair of the committee. Jenya, I think, are you on, Jenya?
I'm here. I'm here.
Hi. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jenya. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I'm lucky to join Seth and Kari leading this group. We're very excited about the projects we're running. So, yeah. And welcome to join, and yeah.
Thank you. And we're going to have some breakout time here in a little bit. So to give folks an idea of some of the ongoing projects, Julie Rios is running a Delphi panel to try to gain consensus on how AMH should be utilized in the post-cancer treatment setting. So there's a group of a couple dozen folks who have been involved in answering questions, if they agree with the questions, and these have been going back and reframed until we can get some consensus, and we're very close. There's just two statements that are left that need to be voted on, and after that we'll have a manuscript to begin preparing. Jenya and Miriam have been working on a survey project to look at fertility follow-up practices in survivors. So not preservation before treatment, but how do you monitor survivors after treatment, and what do you offer? And this survey is what was distributed within the Oncofertility Consortium, but now has gone out to several international organizations. So there's, I think, at least 10 different countries where we've gotten responses from, which is pretty incredible. To really get an idea about how people think about oncofertility internationally. Venetia talked about the clinical conundrums. And then we have two ongoing review papers that are moving forward. So Amanda Saraf and Mavash Rahim are working on a review paper to talk about thrombosis and bleeding in the oncofertility setting, in terms of focusing on how to manage those potential complications. And then there's another one just a little bit earlier in development, trying to establish a culturally sensitive approach, keeping in mind differences in religious practices and geographic situations when talking about oncofertility with patients. And then in the last year, James and his team published this paper in Pediatric Blood and Cancer, which was focused on third-party reproduction among long-term survivors. So what types of things need to be considered from a practical and ethical standpoint when using third parties for reproduction. So the umbrella project that James did, that was not specifically a PAC project, but James worked within the PAC to get some people involved So there's just a little bit of a difference between some of the projects above and then how this kind of PAC adjacent project comes together. And if you have ideas, we'll talk in the breakout room, and some of these ideas may be better for something adjacent, some may be better for something inside the PAC, but we can talk about that later. That's all I have to go over at the moment.
Thanks, Seth. All right. We will move right along to the education report. So I'm not sure if Anthony's on, or I think I saw Alexa.
Yeah, I don't think Anthony's on. So this is my first year on the PAC Leadership Committee, so I'm getting my feet wet and learning my way around. Happy to be here. Our major focus this year is on our quarterly webinars. Like we said, we had a excellent webinar in February discussing clinical conundrums, and it is available on YouTube for you guys to watch if you'd like to. And then we have another webinar scheduled for June 23rd. Very excited about our panelists. We're going to have Dr. Sue and Dr. Hurley discuss a few more of our clinical conundrums that pertain to reproductive endocrinology in particular. So we'll have that. And then we want to have a fall clinical conundrum webinar focus more on male infertility. And then hopefully in the winter, we'll have the risk stratification updates. So if anybody has any ideas about how we can strengthen our education for our community, happy to talk more in our breakout room session.
Yeah, and I think if anyone has like you said, a great idea to lead a webinar or wants to contribute to a webinar, definitely join the education group at the breakout session. And thanks to Alexa, she's worked really hard on these webinars. And then she's just going to also briefly talk about an online tool that should be coming down the pipes in a while, but.
Yeah, so I think this is flows into education. I really wanted to figure out a way for clinicians to be able to utilize or to understand fertility risk. I was really thinking of my pediatric oncology colleagues who are struggling with knowing who to refer and who not to refer in a resource poor setting where we can't see every patient. So this is in development. I'd really like some help in the future. I think probably when we have our new risk stratification guidelines, we'll roll it out. And in the meantime, I'll submit a concept with Lillian. But if anyone's interested in helping me work on this, it's supposed to be very easy to use and user-friendly. So let me know. You can use the QR code and there'll be more. I'll send another email out when we're a little bit closer.
So the QR code is if anyone is interested in eventually reviewing the protocols for accuracy, we're looking for someone who would be maybe interested in reviewing BMT, leukemia, lymphoma, solid tumor, neuro-onc, and or being on a committee to kind of go over and look at usability and to talk through if this is, their feelings on this website. So yeah, this tool. So anyway, so yeah, if you are interested in doing either of those or want to hear more about what that opportunity would look like, again, it's probably a little bit a ways in the future, but just with us meeting only semi-annually, we wanted to put this out and get this on people's radar in case, again, someone's interested in helping with this in the future. So, and thanks, Alexa, for all of this hard work. And I think it's going to be a really awesome tool once it's done. So
thanks. Awesome.
All right, research. I think I saw Maggie on, and Jen, I guess, but Jen had to pop off. So Maggie, do you want to go over research report?
Yeah, so there was a question about like, is there a list of ongoing projects? I feel like we have very few actual PAC supported ongoing projects, and this is the only one from the research committee. So I guess this is your list right here for whoever had asked. So what we have ongoing right now, it's another survey, and it's the safety of ovarian tissue cryopreservation, practice patterns, and provider opinions. So this is kind of a multi-site international project. So 2 researchers at Duke, Dr. Tara Strictilis and her resident, Dr. Alexandra Pacelli, and then Dr. Mari van de Heuvel in the Netherlands, right? So they are collaborating together to do this survey to assess the current practice patterns of provider opinions regarding OTC. And this kind of has been a couple years in development right now because there's so much heterogeneity also between when OTC is offered, who offers it, what are cutoffs, and those sorts of things. And then since 2019, OTC is no longer considered experimental, so a lot more people are able to offer these procedures, but there's still no guidelines. And so the ultimate goal is for a PAC supported guidelines of who is a good surgical candidate for OTC. So right now the survey includes, it's about a 10-minute survey. It includes lots of different pieces, like what type of provider are you, such as like the surgical, med-onc, peds, those sorts of things, information about patients that they see. So not like a specific patients, but like what age range do you see? What diagnoses do you treat? What treatments do your patients get? Like, and then little things about like labs and comorbidities and just like a little bit of those sorts of things too about the patients that they treat, and then the service that they are able to provide or know that is provided. Then also if they provide OTC, the description of the surgery, especially the approach to surgery and how much time it takes, if there are any concurrent procedures and use of antibiotics, and then like specifically complications that arise after it, and then any delay in treatment or how quickly after surgery can treatment start, especially if it's chemotherapy or radiation. And then also a little section about the perceived safety given specific circumstances. So for instance, it's like you have this patient here with platelets of 40. Like, do you feel like this is safe? You have a patient here who has recurrent disease. Do you feel like it's safe? You have a 4-year-old. Do you think it's safe? Like those sorts of questions too, just to really assess what's going on. So the survey is about to be completed, I think, soon. I think the goal is to be completed this month and then start sending it out. And so the target audience for the survey is going to be kind of the POG listserv, so the Peds Oncology group, and then a similar group in Europe as well for the initial survey.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that this is going to be really exciting because someone who just recently went through our OTC kind of inclusion exclusion criteria, there's really is so heterogeneous on that front. And so I think this will be really helpful to have this information.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting, there's a lot of like platelet cutoffs, hemoglobin cutoffs, ANC, AMH, those sorts of things that we all kind of differ just a little bit in. And so those are the specific scenarios that they're providing to these survey responders, and just really understanding how different they are and then doing like a literature review to see like the safety and possibly even then a prospective study too, to address some of these questions.
Great, thanks. All right, and so we are going to end with just the QR code again if you're interested. I think Kari also put a link in the chat if you are on your phone and can't scan your QR code. And then we will actually have about a half hour to do a breakout room. So thanks for everyone for joining in for the great conversation. I think I can probably have like 5 minutes while people are finishing this if there's any other questions before the breakout room. So Not sure if there's anyone else who has any questions about anything we talked about. Otherwise, we can go right in to the chat.